question of the night is the future of events. And this was actually really interesting when Craig and I were talking about it as to what kind of happens next. I think it was yesterday they announced a report that the 18 to 21-year-olds are going out less and less, and it was talking about screen time, and 71% of them were going to bed with their phones at night and how this was impacting them on a daily, and that they literally just did not want to leave the digital world because that phone is their necessity now. So when we look at events in the next sort of 10 to 20 years, what do we believe that's going to look like from an experience perspective and from an F&B perspective? What is going to come into the marketplace? How is that going to evolve for you guys with spirits, with people drinking less, veganism? How far can you go with experience as things like VR come into the marketplace? What do you guys believe is next?
Something which is completely opposite to sort of experience, I guess, is sort of the initial crux of like the technology part of it, which is something I think Nick will have an opinion on. At the moment, we're testing like an API with our booking system, our event booking system, Priava, with HireSpace, the event agency, to integrate inquiries coming directly into our CRM system to sort of cut out that time process that it takes for it to come from the agency themselves. And they have full visibility and transparency as to the conversations we're having with the client. And I think that whole booking process is something that in the future is going to completely change. I think everyone is going online, and obviously Design My Night over the last 10 years has shown that that's the way to look for venues now. Whereas before, everyone used to have a square meal guide in front of them and like, oh, what venues can I look at? And now they go, everyone, even for corporate, for anything, goes straight to Design My Night, you know, and that's quite a recent change.
I think it's refreshing as well. We're talking about bringing theatre and performance to some of the drinking occasions and events. I think sometimes we think digitally first and we try and engineer stuff, whereas actually the old romanticist would probably say everything starts with just a good story and a simple story, and everything comes full circle back to that sometimes. And even some of the greatest activations that we see that hero, some of the just fairy tales and child stories. So I think that's where you bring out emotion. I think you're right. I think AR and VR has got a huge part to play. I think it's really important from a drinks brand perspective that it has a solid part to play in education, because it has got a really amazing tool there to educate people in worldly spirits about cocktail craft, taste, appreciation, many things. But fundamentally, social experiences are enhanced by that spark and often that kind of raw story. So it's about how do you use digital as a tool to amplify that necessarily, rather than thinking about it first, because you probably come up with a pretty awful story.
And I think as well, sort of sustainability is obviously something that everyone talks about nowadays. I'd say maybe 20% of our clients ask us what our sustainability policy is, which is something that no one had ever asked us before, so we now have one. And I think the whole thing about the plastic straws and disposables and things, like, we try to not use any at all in terms of, like, for bowl food, we use sort of bamboo boats and crockery that can be rewashed, and not using any sort of plastic shot glasses or anything like that for anything. We use eco straws now. And it was funny how overnight that was something that happened in like a second. And if that's what the future continues to hold, then clearly that's going to play a huge part in events.
And every inquiry I know, well, not every inquiry obviously, but there's such a huge, I mean, it is very much for kind of the financial side and, you know, the Spotify's of the world and everything else where it's so big. And I was just about to say that's why it's such a big focus now that the venues out there, there's not a huge amount of venues in London that really can say I'm a sustainable venue through and through. And that is, you know, people can incorporate the sustainability side of things, absolutely, and that will definitely help. And I think a lot of bookers understand that they're not going to get a venue that is fully sustainable because it's just not been around, you know, it's not been a focus enough or for long enough to be warranted. But definitely, it's brilliant if anything you can do to kind of, you know, that pattern. And I know we've gone off technology slightly, but for me, that is the hot topic at the moment. I'm seeing that more and more and having to ask that question consistently to venues. So definitely, I think that's the thing.
Well, my finishing line would be that the idea is human. The rest of it is just logistics, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's why I say we're in an incredible place where we can reconnect individuals as being human. There is so much which is taking that away in terms of physical contact, in terms of conversations that you're having with people, etc. And technology and sustainability and all the rest of it, that's all logistics. So you've got to come back to that core idea, which is the human bit. The rest of it is just building blocks to actually deliver that.
without sounding corny, hospitality at its core is still providing a good personal experience to the customer. So you can have technology, you can have VR, and however that develops. But I just think it will come full circle again to good food, good drinks, good fun. And I think that will just constantly be coming round and round. I don't think it will, be virtual reality and we're all in our own bedrooms going to clubs.
Going to an event.
I think it will just come back. I think that's the great thing about hospitality is it is quite old-fashioned. That you still just like going to a good pub, especially in the UK, where the food's good, your friends are there, drinks are good, and I think that will always be a theme running through.